What's going on, everyone? So when you think of the Miami Heat and Heat culture, like Jimmy Butler just goes hand in hand. Like Jimmy Butler has been just kind of the perfect Heat Miami guy. As soon as he went to Miami, it was just like the Heat were off to the races. And he was a guy that just really kind of changed the dynamic of that team in many ways. He's a guy that really makes you believe that Miami always has a chance. Right? No matter how they look in the regular season or whatever, like they get into the playoffs and you're like, oh, this team, they're probably going to be in the finals again, right? It's like they've been to two finals, they're in the conference finals pretty much every other year. Like they're eliminating teams that you don't expect. It's like when they played Boston in the first round, I was super excited. Like that's the matchup that I wanted until Jimmy ended up getting hurt, and then it was like, oh well, now Boston's just going to run through them because it's like, man, if Miami has Jimmy, they might be able to do this thing, right? Like, and unfortunately, it just didn't work out. And then you saw the Jimmy Butler comments, then you saw the Pat Riley comments, and now it's just there's this stir going around of like, hey, Jimmy Butler might be on his way out. Now, Pat Riley said that that's not going to be the case, that that's not the plan, right? That he plans on keeping Jimmy, that he's not going to trade him or anything like that. But there keeps being reports that say just because Pat Riley said that doesn't necessarily mean that's true. So here's what was said. Now, this is from Jake Fisher. Despite what Pat Riley said at his press conference, there were rumblings that Miami could be open to parting ways with Jimmy Butler rather than extending him. Reuniting Butler and Joel Embiid could work, something Fisher mentioned at Yahoo Sports. He also noted DeMar DeRozan is a free agent, but that's not an ideal fit. Talking about with Miami. Now, again, Pat Riley is usually a guy that, when he says something, he means it, but that doesn't mean things can't change, right? That doesn't mean if Jimmy Butler is kind of like, I don't, if the relationship is squandered. Now, when Pat Riley said what he said, I even was like, look, that's a Pat Riley thing. That's a Jimmy thing. Jimmy probably loves it, right? Because that's just who Jimmy is. Like, okay, watch what I'm going to do. Like, Jimmy just thinks, operates, and acts differently. There's a lot of NBA players that I believe if Pat Riley said what he said about Jimmy, which wasn't even that bad. It's just like, hey, if you're not on the court, you shouldn't be talking, right? Like, but there's players that wholeheartedly would have just, they'd be requesting and demanding a trade right now. I don't really think that that's Jimmy Butler, but also Jimmy's not getting any younger, right? You're going to sign him to another 4-year deal, right? Like, does Miami look at this as like, okay, we can be a real contender, right? Miami's been trying to get that other guy for a while now. They thought they were going to get it in Damian Lillard, and then, they played games, messed around, and he ended up going to Milwaukee, right? So now it's very possible that they could go get a Donovan Mitchell or some other piece, right? That could come in, maybe make some sense, and then they try to go on another championship run, right? But if they don't land, like let's say they do miss out on everything, right? And they are kind of just the same team. If you're Miami, do you start thinking like, what could we get for Jimmy? Do you start thinking like maybe we should retool and look in a different direction, right? Like, it's just Jimmy, he's been hurt a lot more lately. Like I said, he's only getting older, right? Like, yes, you've gotten to the finals, but both times, no one really thought that they were going to win it, right? Even against Denver, it was like, yeah, that's cool. Glad that they made it. Cool story, right? Going, losing the first play-in game, going on that crazy run, right? They just kind of had most of the East's number. But also, it's like, you look at the Milwaukee series last year, right? And it's like, if Giannis is healthy, does Miami really pull that off? I don't think so. And it's like, okay, do you really think that, like, say you run it back from the team from last year, can you win a championship with that team? Now, granted, luckily, the East is so weak right now, assuming all things stand kind of the way they are. You really only have to get through Boston, which you've kind of had their number, right? The Knicks and maybe the Sixers, right? I'm not, and this is just me personally, I'm not really sold on Milwaukee. I just think that one, I think that they're a little too old. Two, I don't really like the Dame and Giannis fit. Like it had its moments where it looked okay, and maybe with another year, maybe it looks better. But Dame just doesn't look like the same guy, and Giannis keeps getting hurt. And I think that that's because he's having to basically be like historically great for Milwaukee to be a top 5 team. So I just I really think you're just like, if you're Miami, you're looking at it as like, there's maybe 3 teams that we really have to worry about. Donovan Mitchell, he probably leaves Cleveland. Even if he doesn't, then they probably trade Darius Garland. Depending on what they get, they might just kind of be neutral, right? So I don't think Miami's really worried about Cleveland. So you look at it and it's like, okay, Miami's probably got like 2 teams to go through. But can you get through those teams? Right? And that's assuming, again, everybody just stands pat and everything's kind of the way it is. Now, Boston, they're probably going to be more likely than not the same team for the next handful of years. Sixers definitely are probably going to look very different. And the Knicks, I think that they are going, I mean, I said this after the OG trade that I thought the Knicks were the second best team in the league. Or sorry, not the league, the Eastern Conference. Second best team in the Eastern Conference behind Boston, right? So I still think that. I still think if they're healthy, like, I think that was the biggest factor. I think they would be in the conference finals right now against Boston. I think that they match up pretty well against Boston if they were fully healthy. So again, it's a weird spot if you're Miami, right? Because it's like Jimmy is in many ways like the embodiment of Heat culture, but it's just like, do you go the younger route? Do you try to go kind of push your chips in and maybe go get some younger pieces and kind of try to retool this roster or something, right? Like it's tough. It's a rock and a hard spot, right? Like I think, if I'm being honest, I think Butler stays with the Heat. I don't think Miami. I think Pat Riley is not going to change his mind. Now, again, obviously, you get an offer that's too good to be true, then you probably take it. But I just think that, how many teams are looking to sell the farm for Jimmy Butler? I don't think that there are very many. Not that every team wouldn't love to have a guy like Jimmy Butler. It's just, again, you take in the factors, the injuries and the age and just his personality, right? You gotta have a very specific, again, culture for Jimmy Butler. We've seen him on other places. Like look at like Minnesota and how disastrous that was, right? Like that's also kind of painted a bad taste in many organizations' mouths, and they've probably looked at it as like, hey, do we really want to bring him in and have him, cussing out all our young guys and stuff? But like I said, I love Jimmy. I love his personality. I love his attitude. I love his just demeanor. But I also understand it's not for everybody. But no, I think if you're Miami, I think you at least listen, right? Like I just think that that's part of being a GM and running an organization. You always listen, right? Like for anybody, I think that there are like genuinely only a handful, if that, of untouchables, right? There's a lot of guys in the league that you're not just trading just to trade, but I do think that there are, a lot of players that people think are untouchable really aren't untouchable. It's just, you just have to find the right trade for it, right? Like, there's a lot of Miami Heat fans right now that probably are looking at Jimmy Butler and going like, oh, he's, no matter what, he's untouchable. Really, like if you could get Luka for Jimmy, would you do it? Okay, then he's not untouchable, right? Like if you could get Giannis for Jimmy, then guess what? He's not untouchable, right? Again, I'm not saying you're trading him for, whatever, Darius Garland or something, right? But I do think if the right trade and the right package is there, and depending on the direction you want to go is there, I wouldn't be shocked if Miami traded Jimmy Butler. And we've seen a lot of that article mentioned DeMar DeRozan. DeMar DeRozan is probably the best example of it, right? Like he had the entire organization of Toronto, the GM, the owner, all of it talking about how, he's a Raptor for life and they're never going to trade him. And then like 3 days later, he's traded for Kawhi. Because again, if the right deal is on the table, you're taking it, right? Now, I don't think that they would have just traded DeMar for anybody, but you have an opportunity to get Kawhi, you do it. So it's kind of where I'm at with Jimmy Butler. But Anyway, as always, this is a discussion. I pass a question on to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Do you think Jimmy stays with Miami? Do you think he gets traded? Do you think that it's time for them to kind of depart? Or do you think like, nah, he's got to be a Heat lifer now, or at least the rest of his career? How do you feel? Whatever your thoughts are, love to hear. Let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. Helps me enjoy these types of videos. Truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.